All right, so I am Shobo Pian here with ESFIWorld.com. I'm here with Sundance. Why don't we start with you introducing yourself to those few people who might not know who you are?
Well, my name's Sundance DiGiovanni, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Major League Gaming. Sorry, that's all me. That's my stuff, my devices over there. I've been CEO for just over a year, and we're into the second event of the 2011 season. We're here in Columbus, and it's great to be here with you.
Cool. Why don't we go back one event to Dallas, and why don't you you don't need to get into any technical details, but just give us a rundown of what the atmosphere was like in Dallas when things went wrong. How did that go for you?
Well, thanks for bringing up one of the most painful professional experiences of my career. It was disappointing to not be able to deliver on the promise. When we set out with our events and we set out to try and bring this experience to people, the goal is always to do it as well as anybody possibly can. Right? We want to be the best. So Dallas was my first event of my new season. I was the CEO. It wasn't going to operate on a plan that I had inherited from anyone else. It was my plan, and it didn't work. So what I did is I looked at that as an opportunity to blow the pieces up that weren't properly constructed and reconstruct those with partners and with individuals who knew what needed to be done. So we went out and did the partnership with StreamWorks, brought in a consultant on the video side to work in-house with us. We changed the way we monetized the ads on the streams, and we invested a lot, kind of across the board, even with the booths and with bringing in the Korean players, because sometimes out of tragedy and adversity, you're able to rebuild. And so my goal was to take that event and turn it into a positive. And I would say so far that through a day and a half of Columbus that we've been successful in accomplishing a lot of what we wanted to. But there's still more planned. But I was in a dark place during that event. It was incredibly painful for me personally. Until yesterday when the stream went up and the fans were in the room and everyone was cheering, I had not recovered. But now I feel recovered from Dallas finally.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, I'll knock on some wood after this interview, but this has been going really well, I think. Can you sort of compare and contrast how this has been going for you on a personal level to see? I mean, the fans out there have been going crazy in a way that I didn't see in Dallas. So can you compare and contrast how you've been feeling during this event compared to Dallas?
Well, Dallas, again, I mean, I spent a lot of time. Normally, I don't like to walk around with the fans and meet people and interact, sign autographs, shake hands, and talk to parents, whatever I can do to be part of the community. Because no matter what people think of me, if they don't know me or who I am or where I come from, I love this. The reason I do this is because I love it. So Dallas, for me, I was stuck behind the curtain, being called all sorts of things on Twitter, but trying to respond, trying to own the issue, and trying to essentially humanize it and say, look, I'm the guy. You can blame me. It is my fault. I'm in charge. And so that was a challenge. But now, again, after a day and a half, there's still a lot to get through. The opposite has happened. I've been out with the crowds. I've been able to watch matches, and the interaction with folks on our site and on Twitter has been very positive. So, yin yang, the dark and the light. I don't know. There's a huge difference between the events for me, but we're not done. Again, there's still things that we need to address. There wasn't a lot of time between the events, so there were some things that I wanted to do that I haven't been able to. But those things will be coming, and I can sit here with you today with a smile on my face. Where the last event, I wasn't smiling too much.
Yesterday, we got a chance to go backstage, and it's a really impressive operation. I was wondering, what role do you play back there during the events, if any?
Backstage, for the folks who don't know or haven't seen it, is our production center. Essentially, we have 4 studios side by side. With the new lineup, the way we have the stages out front, there's no room for a tower without obstructing the view. So we moved everything backstage, and essentially what you have is 4 TV studios. The StarCraft Red and Blue. You've got Call of Duty and Halo, right? So all those things need to be switched, need to be put together and now sent into our satellite truck. And they're directors. There are 4 stream directors. There's talent for each of them. There are producers. There are people who handle audio, who handle the graphics. That's all been built out over the course of the last 5 years or so. Originally, I was talent. I was one of the guys who was casting games. Then I moved to directing and producing the stream. And now I've gotten to a point where I've backfilled that with other people. But a lot of what you see, a lot of the stuff that we create and produce as content out of these events is born from the vision that I had originally when Mike Steps and I started this company, was to create competitive gaming content that rivaled traditional sport. So, because you have to understand, in the U.S. especially, that wasn't a concept that a lot of people understood. Korea, something existed, and even with the competitive PC scene, they didn't understand it as like, well, this could be on TV. So that's really what we had to do. And so the vision was started many years ago, but now it's executed by other people. So I try and stay out of the way, but if there's ever a question of, well, this or that, what should we do? You know, if someone comes to me, I'll give them an answer in 2 seconds. So I try and be as available as possible.
Can you briefly run down your day-to-day schedule during an event like this?
Well, an event like this, you know, I will get into the town a couple of days ahead of, you know, door open when we're doing setup. Most guys who do the builds get here Monday. I'll get here on a Wednesday or Thursday. And, you know, initially what happens is there's the checking off everything, making sure the distribution deals are in place for the content that we're producing, making sure that, you know, the sponsors are getting their activations put together, making sure that any of the people we're selling to, trying to get to come on board as partners, are scheduled and everything is ready. Then it's really just the day is broken into blocks. I sit back there with them, make sure that as they're doing rehearsals for the streams that everything seems good. I go over the scripts with folks, do a lot of handshaking with potential partners or existing partners, try and talk with players when we have the player meetings. I try and spend some time with them. But again, it's, you know, I don't have too much of a set schedule. I try and be as accessible as possible, and I also really do try and spend a significant amount of time with the fans. You know, I love the fact that people come up to me and want my autograph, because all I do, I mean, you know, I sign checks and get the stuff set up, but a lot of the people that I interact with understand that, you know, I do this because I love it, and I wish it existed when I was a kid. Not that I would have been any good, but it would have been great to have these things to go to. So it's nice to have those conversations, and with an event like this one, as compared to Dallas, being out there and being able to talk to the folks is my favorite part of the day.
Cool. So I know that MLG is becoming a lot more than just these events a couple of times a year. I know that, like I said, we went backstage and they talked about setting up studios and doing daily broadcasts. So what is your schedule? I guess the first thing I want to ask, what is your schedule outside of these events on a daily basis, and how are you working to becoming a bigger presence in the competitive gaming scene?
So again, my schedule outside of these events is I put my son on the bus every day when he goes to school. I get on the train, start reading email, and get into the office and tackle whatever needs to happen. I mean, we have a growing staff. We've been bringing in more people recently, but you know, everything that we're doing this year is focused on expanding our brand recognition and our reach globally. Right. So what that means is that with events here in the States, creating content that can be packaged up and sent out, right, or looking at doing events overseas, international events. You know, we're looking at the UK, we're looking at Brazil, we're looking at Germany. So on any given day, the actions may change, but the focus is always the same. And my routine is one that, you know, it's pretty locked in. Everyone knows it. I get to work a little bit later because I put my son on the bus, and that's kind of, you know, that's kind of one of the things that is important to me. And having that time to kind of start the day with the right perspective is important, especially coming out of something like Dallas. But you know, so each and every day what I'm doing is I'm either meeting with people about opportunities here in the States to help bring in new partners or brands, or to leverage what we've built, opportunities overseas with folks who are interested in partnering with us, and just executing against the plan that we put in place at the end of last year. I mean, we're halfway through this year, and we're in a pretty good place with that plan, but there's always work to be done. So it's just making sure that the company stays focused, that people are put in a position where they can succeed, because at the end of the day, really what it comes down to is the vision's got to be executed. You have to have the right people to execute it, and I'm only one person. We're strong because we have a great staff of people around us.
One question I have to ask is, because Tasteless and Artosis, every time they come on screen, get some of the biggest cheers in really any game that I've seen so far, or any MLG I've seen so far. So the question I have to ask is, do you want to bring them back, or, I mean, is that a goal here?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I was fortunate if I got to hang out with Nick and Dan on Thursday when they showed up. We chilled out. They're troopers. They were jet lagged, but you know, they're good guys. And you know, just as Sean and Marcus are good guys, but they're in a different category because this is what they do for the biggest competitive league out there around StarCraft. I would put GSL ahead of us at the moment, obviously, because they've been doing it longer and just the structure that they have. But bringing them over was something that I wanted to do. And actually, Ben, who works for me, really pushed for it, and because we wanted to show that we're committed to creating the best experience possible for the viewers, both in the room and out, at home. And they're dynamic. I mean, these guys are, I think, as a duo, that they're the best that's out there, honestly, because they work together so much and they know each other so well. So my goal is not just to have them involved with these events, but to do even more with them. And they seem pretty excited for it. So if things go as planned, you'll be seeing them at every MLG event from here on out.
Awesome. Another question. I briefly touched on it before about the studios you're building, I know, in New York and in Texas. Can you talk at all about what your specific plans are, or even vaguely, if not, anything at all to say about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So JP, who's another example of an incredible guy in the community, and has been an incredible asset for us. And we finally wised up and hired him full time. So he's actually moving to Galveston. He's going to work with Mark Turner and actually going to live in the studio. So what we're going to do is we're going to produce daily content with them. We're looking at not just StarCraft, but things like League of Legends, Han. I mean, what we're trying to do is expand out a little bit and get into be a broadcast network with them. At the same time, in our office in New York City that we're just moving into and finishing the construction build out on, we're going to have a studio there as well. So with these two studios, with rotating bodies and different talent, the goal is to become just a standardized broadcast network where on Tuesday nights you'll know that there's a certain piece of programming that's coming on at a certain time around a certain game with a certain caster, a certain talent, and you tune in or don't if it's not your game or not the person you like. But what we want to do is we've got the ability with our IMG relationship to globally distribute to over 500 million eyeballs. So it would be crazy not to try and utilize that. And we can monetize it very well, and it's also, it increases more mind share. So you'll see a lot coming out of the MLG studios that we're building, and then probably by, I'd say, July, August. But it's not going to end there. There's going to be more, which can't really touch on yet, but we're going to be working to make sure that there's enough content for the audience, because the audience seems to have a rabid desire to consume it. So.
Well, speaking of the future, in sort of a bigger picture, when we were backstage, we talked to someone, and he was saying that this business model of moving around the country and even around the world serves many purposes, but the ideal goal would be a single location, or at least several permanent locations. Do you have any thoughts on that sort of idea?
Well, I mean, I think it's, if you could have these stadiums or arenas that you knew you could fill and that, that could pay for themselves, great. The studios kind of accomplished that a little bit. With these studios that we're building, I mean, we'll have two in a month. We may expand to 3 or 4 eventually around this. We could work with partners like Team Liquid or Well Played or whomever to produce content with them in these studios. I'm not saying that MLG even needs to own it. It's just we're going to be producing content.
Will you have an audience in the studio?
I think I love in-studio audiences. I think the big thing with that is that square footage in New York City is expensive, and they're not arenas. We've done the studio audience thing in the past and had success with it though. But with regard to the fixed locations, the challenge there is that if you can create, like if you imagine us loading 3 tractor trailers, driving them around the country, unloading everything and setting it up, whoa, that's a lot of effort. But if you walk in this room after we do this interview and you just stand there and listen for a little while and you look at the people, right? You don't get that if you're just in a fixed area, right? What you get is a sense of something special. A lot of these people travel in, but also the local. Like there are people who go to Columbus but no other event. There are people who go to Anaheim but no other event, right? With fixed locations, what you've got to get to is a place where you're guaranteed a certain draw, right? Minnesota Twins, for example, don't necessarily generate as much gate revenue as the New York Yankees, because they build a new stadium. Suddenly, it's exciting again, but we wouldn't be either of those. We'd be somebody saying, we need, how many people do we need to guarantee to have a fixed event space make sense? How many times a year do we need to use it? How do we monetize it? So there's potential deals that could happen with partners to do that. But for the moment, the fixed competition space outside of a studio, similar to what you see with the GSL, doesn't make a lot of sense in my mind, because you also lose the ability to on the sales side, to get a sponsor engaged in multiple cities. And if you're not talking about top 10 DMAs, which we're out of now, it used to be that it had to be top 10. So DMA is a domestic market, so it's essentially population-based, right? It starts to get difficult. So where would we build these things? St. Louis, Kansas City, here, where would the perfect place for an American esports arena be? It wouldn't be New York City or Los Angeles, that's for sure, because it's too expensive.
Okay, I won't take up any more of your time. I really appreciate it, though. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.